We have Josh Ziegelbaum with us here today. Josh, I really appreciate your time. And for those who would like to follow along, I'm going to direct everybody to your website, legacy-group.co. Remember, it's that .co. I sometimes just type the M on the end of those. So that's why I'm emphasizing that. So legacy-group.co. And Legacy and his team, they focus on alternative investments outside of the United States. And we're going to dive into a few of those things and what that means. But I really appreciate your time, Josh, and thanks for being with me here today.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. It's a pleasure to be here as well.
So, there's going to be a lot to unpack here, and I think it's best to hear it directly from you. What exactly does Legacy Group do?
Sure. Great question. So my name's Josh Ziegelbaum. As you mentioned, I'm the Director of Investor Relations at Legacy Group. And what we do is we open unique investment opportunities up for our investors, primarily our US-based investors. We're a private equity firm that focuses on real assets outside the US. We currently have a portfolio company of ours, the Green Coffee Company, which I'll get to in a moment. But essentially, we're the second largest producer of coffee in the entire country. So really, we provide passive investment opportunities to high net worth investors. We open up interesting markets that they otherwise wouldn't have access to through traditional methods. And we're really just getting started here. So we have a portfolio of companies which we brought to the market, and we're looking to continue to accelerate over the coming years here. But we have a very active approach in our management. We make all the management decisions on behalf of our investors. We sit in the board meetings, and we really do everything we can to drive these businesses forward. So we deploy our capital in businesses that we either started from scratch or that we believe in, and then we open those up for investors to participate alongside of us.
So, a lot of people, they start with any kind of real estate investment or business investment in their backyard. Why did you guys jump into this international space?
Sure. So we really identified Colombia as a market with a tremendous amount of opportunity that was really untapped as far as sophisticated asset managers are concerned. The background of the two partners, Cole Shepard, our founding partner, he has a background in M&A. He's worked throughout the world, throughout Asia, throughout Bermuda, and he stumbled upon Medellin in his travels, and he fell in love with it and saw that it was ripe with opportunity. So we actually started with some real estate investing locally that switched and eventually evolved into an agriculture project, which is the Green Coffee Company. And really, it's just such a fragmented market that has a tremendous amount of growth opportunity. And we just didn't see asset managers really deploying there or developing special businesses, especially in the coffee industry. It's highly fragmented, with very small farmers making up the majority of the landholders there. So we identified a chance to really scale and sophisticate the business, bring first world practices to a somewhat undeveloped area, and use those to grow and scale a business, which we have a goal of taking public here in the US, actually. So while the assets are all in Colombia primarily, we have US-based structures for our investment products. So our investors are actually investing in a US-based holding company where all the assets flow up to the parent to them. So that's a way in which we get our guys comfortable with international investing. Theoretically, it's domestic as far as our investors are concerned, but we wanted to open up other markets, allow real estate investors to get exposure to alternative assets. And really, most of our investors are primarily real estate investors, and they use our projects as means of diversification into new asset classes and new markets.
Sure. So you've brought up the Green Coffee Company a couple times here now. Let's start with that entity and how that piece of the puzzle works, because I think it might clarify exactly how this whole process works. So was Green Coffee Company something that you, through your syndication, for the lack of a better way of describing it, is it something you acquired? Is it something you started from scratch? How did that piece of it come to be?
Sure. It was started from scratch, from the ground up. We actually seed funded the project from a number of real estate investors through somewhat of a syndicated model, as you mentioned. We did our seed round back in 2017, and it was really an idea to go out, start acquiring farmland, real assets that produce cash flow, and and essentially, let's just say, kind of give people the chance to invest in agriculture in Colombia where they otherwise would never have access to, because there's no one doing what we're doing. Like, these types of projects really don't exist. So it was started from the ground up. We built it and scaled it over the years. We recently doubled our land holdings to 4,700 acres. And we have about 4 million trees in the ground and growing. So it was started from scratch. We've done it through a series of acquisitions. We acquire farms in a geographically centric region. It's currently in Salgar. It's a town about 2 to 3 hours outside of Medellin. And it's all been done from the ground up through acquisitions.
Sure. So with all that, did you or your partners have some background when it came to the coffee business, or is that something that you looked externally for that type of expertise, and how did you build that team?
Sure, that's a great question. So our backgrounds are the following. So my background's in financial services. I was a private banker before joining up with Legacy Group. And I was a relationship manager for high net worth clients and business owners in Miami Beach, initially in Central Jersey, but moved down here a few years ago. And that's my background: wealth management, had my Series 7, was kind of working with public securities, doing some real estate investing myself on a personal level, but not in agriculture specifically until the Green Coffee Company. Cole Shepard, the founding partner, his background is in M&A and corporate advisory. So he has a heavy background there. He's worked with some agricultural companies before starting or founding the GCC, but really primarily background in M&A and accounting. And then the other partner, Adam Jason, he is a full career as a corporate attorney in the US. Both of them live down in Colombia full-time in Medellin. I support them from Fort Lauderdale here. But as far as who's spearheading the operations, we hired a 25-year veteran of the agricultural business to be our CEO. That's Boris Woolner. And we've also hired our CFO, who is Leonardo Sanchez. He was previously working for Fox Latin America. Our chief agronomist, who we put in place, Marino Restrepo, he was the agronomist for Starbucks Colombia. So we've hired out a lot of that agriculture talent, I would say, as far as how we've done this and built it.
Sure. So yeah, this is just really interesting how you went about it. I mean, you essentially started this whole project in 2017, and now you are did you say you were the second largest coffee distributor in the US?
Not in the US, in Colombia. So we're the second
Colombia.
largest coffee producer in Colombia. And that's with 4,700 acres as of today.
Yeah. Wow. So does most of the product go to the US then, or?
Yeah, we have sales channels in the US, and we also sell domestically in Colombia to the collective groups. We have buyers in Asia, in Europe. We sell to some of the largest trading houses in the world, such as Sucafina and SKN. But we do have some domestic sales channels here in the US. I should mention this as well. What we do is we sell wholesale unroasted coffee. So it's not a brand that you would necessarily see in stores today. However, we did recently add the product to Amazon for our investors and followers to enjoy. But we sell domestically in Colombia, internationally to the US and other parts of the world as well. But as we look to go vertical in the coming years here, we intend on either acquiring or building out roasting channels in the United States, so we can go further down the value chain, make more margin per pound, and create more long-term value for ourselves and our investors.
Sure. Yeah, some of the people that listen to the show, they actually are into land investing, buy, sell land, raw land, but that's primarily in the United States. What differences have you found dealing with land investments like this in Colombia?
Sure. Well, as I kind of mentioned earlier, the market is incredibly fragmented there. And so it's like smaller landholding families that have owned these farms for generations. It's not an inherently liquid market. You have to literally go and negotiate with the families in person out in the mountains in Colombia. It's very different and higher barriers to entry, I would say. You can't just kind of up and go and kind of look on an MLS and start identifying properties that are available. It's really off market. And I would say that's kind of the primary differentiating factor. And then a lot of it's like in-person negotiations and finding opportunities. We have conversations for years before they end up in acquisitions in many cases.
Sure. So is there like a lot of different processes regarding any kind of governmental agency entities and stuff you have to deal with down there too? Or is it fairly similar?
It's similar in certain regards. I mean, you hold title to the property. I mean, it's similar in that sense. A lot of it's done through attorneys and notaries, people that handle the transactions. You could work with a broker, but a lot of these transactions are direct, buyer to seller. At least in our case, that's how we were able to buy at distressed pricing, really add value. Somewhat value add investing is what we do with off market deals. I would say it's similar in certain regards in terms of holding title, but the process is different for sure. And the documents are all in Spanish and other things. So you need to really have the team behind you that's able to execute, make sure everything's done in a clean, professional manner, and that all the assets are protected. And as mentioned, that they all actually flow up to our parent company in the US. So we have operating subsidiaries in Colombia, one of which holds title to the land, the other does the operations. And then our holding company owns both of those. So we indirectly hold title to everything here in the US. So it's a bit different in that structure, I would say, than what you'd find here with direct land purchases.
Right. Okay. Well, with all of that, it started with the coffee company. You're adding value by converting this additional raw land into coffee producing. Like it becomes a business at that point. You said you're adding value. How is the land increasing in value then? Like, can you give us a gauge of how much more valuable it becomes when you're converting it to a coffee producing land like this?
Sure. So I should mention that the farms that we acquire are generally already coffee farms. And then what we do is we improve on them. We plant additional trees. We make the existing trees healthier. We have technologies that monitor the soil, that monitor the light, the rain, and we really increase the production levels on the land, which increases revenue and as you know, creates more profits. So as the land bears more coffee cherries at a higher production rate, the value of it inherently increases. And then kind of beyond that, coffee is an interesting space, or agriculture, because your land value is somewhat tied to the commodity itself. So we've seen a massive surge in the price of coffee over the last 12 months. I mean, it's hitting multi-year highs, almost $2.50 a pound as of this recording. And so people in our earlier rounds, we've acquired all these farms, and then the commodity in which is produced on the farms has gone up exponentially. That's also assisted us, but that's not so much in the value add side, but that goes on. It's kind of bolted on top of what we've done on a operational level. It's kind of what I would say are the main points there.
Yeah. Okay. So the coffee was where you started. What have you been branching off into? You mentioned you have a parent company, but what other type of investments does your company do?
Sure. So we look for innovative investment opportunities in Latin America. As of now, specifically in Colombia, we have an investment in a company called Polygonus. It's a legacy group portfolio company. They do 3D art and design, e-learning. They're heavily involved in the metaverse space, creating characters and such for video games, digital art, and certain productions like digital video productions. The company's grown massively. We made a seed investment into them several years ago, which has grown multiples of that. So we own an equity position in Polygonus at Legacy Group. It's not one for which we've opened up to our investors as of yet. We hope to do so at some point in the future, depending on their capital needs. And then we're actively diligencing disruptive technology companies, looking at a couple fintech type deals and different things. And then, of course, what's next? I mean, we want to continue to expand the Green Coffee Company, do more acquisitions, increase the land holdings, and go vertical in the US through the roasters, as I mentioned, but a couple other things in the hopper that we're working on, and really all specifically around Latin America and Medellin more specifically.
Sure. So Polygonus, have they worked on anything we would recognize?
It's really more focused on Latin American productions. So stuff that's going on in Mexico, Colombia. So nothing that I could really point to, but when your listeners or watchers go to our website, you can find more on Polygonus there. There's a link to theirs, and you can look at some of their footage and things that they've done. You also follow them or us on social, but I wouldn't say anything that everyone would broadly know, but definitely a growing company.
Sure. So just a reminder, everybody, the website is legacy-group.co, and you can learn a little bit more about what Josh is talking about here, including the links to some of these businesses that they invest in. So one of the things on your website that you mention is impact investing. What do you mean by that phrase?
Sure. Essentially doing right by people and doing right by the environment. And we do that with our everyday business practices. So first and foremost, formal employment in the region. It's something that's really non-existent in the coffee sector in Colombia. People are generally paid cash. If they're injured, so be it. We've implemented first world employment methods. We provide full benefits, healthcare, pensions. We really take care of the people in the communities in which we operate. And it's something you could tell when you go there in person. You could see how excited the people are to go to work. And they're all wearing formal clothing, all the proper stuff. So really doing right by the people in the communities in which we operate, that's the main thing. And also the environmental component. We use a limited amount of pesticides in our plant, in our processing. We spray at the base of the trees in order to reduce the amount that's put out there. We reduced water used in terms of our operations. We are using a biodegradable planting mechanism through Elipot. It's a technology that makes like a smaller biodegradable pod to plant a coffee tree instead of a plastic bag. So we're removing a lot of waste in the environment there. I'd say those are kind of like the main things. And it's important because it's the right thing to do, and also because it's rewarded in the public and private markets by investors. So it's something that we're passionate about making a difference, but also the markets receive these types of companies in a better light when you make an impact.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier too that this is kind of it's an alternative or a way for real estate investors to diversify their portfolio investments a bit. I think there's a lot of we don't know what we don't know in this world. With that being said, if somebody was going to pursue or look at alternative forms of investing like this, are there questions that they should ask to ensure that it's a good fit and they're dealing with a reputable company?
Sure. I would always ask someone that's looking at alternative investments, I would tell them to ask about their track record, the team, the management team that's been hired, what is the exit strategy. You want to make sure that the asset manager has a clearly articulated plan on how they're going to take your investment from today until an exit, and hopefully a successful exit. So really taking a deep dive into the materials. You would generally receive a private placement memorandum or an offering memo. So kind of going to that in detail so you understand the transaction in detail, because there are some more moving parts that you would want to review. So I'd say kind of just asking every question on your mind during your diligence calls. Usually what we do is, someone comes into our system, either they visit our website, they subscribe to our newsletter, and we give them regular educational content. But if they're interested in an opportunity, we would connect for an introductory call, tell them more about the company with certain things that we covered today, and maybe a little bit deeper into the offering at the time. I get to know the clients as well. That's really important to us, is really understanding our clients' needs, because not every project is a fit for every person. So everything has its own holding period. Certain things are more income, others are more growth related. Projects like ours are both. So kind of understanding the needs and how it would fit into your overall portfolio. You also want to look at what are my holdings now and how can this complement it? And besides diversifying into alternatives, diversifying different opportunities in the alternative investment space, I think would give people the greatest likelihood of success. And really, alternative investments provide uncorrelated returns, something that I'm very passionate about and think should be part of everyone's portfolio, especially with my background in public markets. I'm seeing a lot of opportunities that don't exist in public markets, outsized returns that can really change people's lives in ways in which an index fund or a residential property might not.
Right. So, what's next? What's next for your company? You're probably looking at your next acquisition or next business. What's next for you?
Sure. On the coffee company itself, we're looking to do another round of acquisitions this year in order to solidify our position as the largest coffee producer in Colombia, and then looking to build out those roasting channels in the U.S. in order to take the company public in a target year of 2025. That's really what we want to do. We're also dual tracking it for a potential sale. So really scaling up the business, adding more land holdings, more real assets into the equation, increasing revenue over the next number of years, and then exiting that business for our investors. And then, as I mentioned, we're looking for new opportunities every day. We're very meticulous and careful in the projects in which we pick and which we put our money behind. But we really want to find new opportunities for our investors that they can deploy capital into emerging markets and feel comfortable working with American professionals along the way.
Sure. Well, this has been eye-opening, Josh. I appreciate you giving us this amount of time and trying to explain this to us. This is a pretty new topic for everybody. Again, I want to remind everybody, legacy-group.co, and you can connect with Josh and his team and see what they're up to. There's quite a bit of content on their website, so definitely check that out. Josh, before I let you go, is there a question you wished I would have asked you here today?
Who is our target? Who are our investors, right? Like, who are these guys that are placing capital into Legacy Group's projects? So I would say almost entirely American investors. We're only open for accredited investors, so high net worth individuals place capital with us. A lot of the guys that have invested in our past round that we just closed, the Series B round, were repeat investors from our earlier rounds. I would say an overwhelming amount of people in our projects are real estate investors, guys that own multifamily, they own single family homes, they have apartment complexes, trailer parks, like guys like this, they love our project because a lot of them are heavy involved in real estate because, as you know, it's a great business to be in, of course. But I would say almost all of our guys meet that category. Some are high income earners from other careers, but pretty interesting to me, especially coming on this show. I see a lot of parallels in maybe your audience here and people that are involved. So I would love to stay connected with your group. And as you mentioned, you could find us on our website, legacy-group.co. You could also email us, investor.relations@legacy-group.co, or find us on social media, and we'd be happy to stay connected.
Well, Josh, this was great. I hope you'll consider coming back again sometime. This is, especially as you're growing, this is just a fascinating story of going from essentially starting this up to being now the number 3 coffee producer in Colombia. Number 2?
Yeah, number 2 today.
Number 2 now. Wow. Okay. Right while we were recording, they became number 2, and they're gunning for number 1. So this is awesome. Thank you again.
Yeah. Thanks, Jack. You have a good day.